My name is James. I've been hauling freight for 12 years, mostly regional runs. Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. I know these roads, or I thought I did. September 17th, 2024, I was running a load from Houston to Shreveport. Standard route, take US 59 north to Lufkin, then cut across on US 84. Easy run, should take about 4.5 hours. The piney woods of East Texas are different from the rest of the state. It's not desert, it's not prairie, it's forest, dense forest. Tall pines that block out the sun, towns that are just a gas station and maybe a church, roads that haven't been paved since the 70s. And between those towns, nothing, just trees, mile after mile of trees. Most truckers avoid the piney woods if they can, not because it's dangerous, officially, but because it feels wrong, like you're driving through somewhere you're not supposed to be. I was about 15 miles south of Lufkin when I saw the construction sign. Highway 84 closed, Detour ahead. Standard orange and white, Department of Transportation, official looking. I slowed down, looked for the detour markers, saw a series of signs pointing off to a side road, hand-painted but clear. Detour, follow signs. Here's the thing, I didn't remember hearing about any construction on 84. I check TX.dot websites before every run. I have apps that alert me to road closures. But maybe it was recent. Emergency repair. Happens sometimes. So I followed the signs. That was my first mistake. The paved highway lasted maybe 2 miles. Then it turned to asphalt patch. Then gravel. Then dirt. I kept following the detour signs. They were getting more frequent, every quarter mile or so. But they were changing. The first ones had been professionally printed, orange and white, DOT standard. But as I got deeper into the forest, they started to look different. Hand-painted, plywood boards nailed to fence posts, the arrows were crooked, the letters uneven, but they all said the same thing: Detour, continue. I looked at my GPS. The screen showed my truck as a blue dot, but the road I was on wasn't on the map, just blank space marked Angelina National Forest. Then the screen went gray. GPS signal lost. I grabbed my phone. No bars, no service, nothing. I should have turned around right then. I know that now. But turning a 40-foot trailer around on a narrow dirt road in dense forest? Not easy. And I kept thinking, the detour has to reconnect eventually. These signs wouldn't just lead nowhere. I kept driving. 5 miles, 10 miles, the road got narrower, rougher. Branches were scraping both sides of my trailer now. The pine canopy overhead was so thick that even though it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it looked like twilight. That's when I started to notice the trees. They were wrong. I mean, they were pine trees, loblolly pines, standard for East Texas, but they were arranged weird, in rows, perfect rows, like someone had planted them deliberately, which isn't that strange. This whole area used to be logging territory, tree farms everywhere, but these rows were old. The trees were massive, probably 60, 70 feet tall, which meant they'd been planted, 50 years ago? More? And they were all exactly the same size, exactly the same spacing, like a grid, like someone had designed it that way. Then I saw the first building. Not a building, a ruin. What was left of a building? An old wooden structure, completely collapsed, covered in vines and moss, barely visible through the trees, maybe 50 feet off the road. Then another one. Then 3 more. All old, all abandoned, all being slowly consumed by the forest. I started seeing other things too. Rusted equipment, old truck chassis, trees growing through the engine blocks, a tractor that looked like it was from the 1940s, fence posts with no fences, just the posts standing in lines leading off into the forest.
This wasn't empty forest. This was a place people had lived, and then left. I rounded a bend and slammed on my brakes. A sign. Wooden, hand-carved letters burned into the wood. Welcome to Pinewood. And below it, in smaller letters, population. We know who you are. That's not how population signs work.
I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, engine idling, staring at that sign. Population, we know who you are. Every instinct told me to put the truck in reverse and get out of there. But the road behind me was too narrow. I'd have to back up for miles. And the road ahead, the Detour sign said it went through the town, through Pinewood. I put the truck in gear and drove forward. The town appeared gradually through the trees, one building, then another, then a whole street. And it wasn't a ghost town, not technically. The buildings were old, 1920s, maybe 1930s, wood construction, company town style, all identical, painted the same faded white. But they weren't ruins, they were maintained. The streets were dirt, but they were graded, smooth, recently graded. No grass growing in the roadbed, no debris. The buildings had roofs, windows with glass, doors on hinges, but no people, no cars, no lights, no movement. Just empty. I drove slowly down what seemed to be the main street. My truck felt too loud, too modern, like I was driving through a museum after hours. On my left, a general store, hand-painted sign above the door, Pinewood Mercantile, established 1927. On my right, a church, white clapboard, steeple with a bell. The bell rope was swaying slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. Every building had shutters. The shutters were closed, all of them. Every window in every building, but not boarded up, just closed, like the whole town had decided to shut their windows at the same time and never open them again. At the end of the main street, I could see a large structure, a sawmill, 3 stories tall, all wood construction. A rusted saw blade the size of a car tire was visible through an open loading bay, and behind it, a water tower. White paint peeling, black letters, Pinewood Timber Co., 1927. I'd never heard of Pinewood, not in 12 years of running routes through East Texas. Never seen it on a map, never heard another trucker mention it. I pulled out my phone. Still no signal, but I downloaded offline maps for emergency situations. I checked the map data. Nothing. According to my maps, I was in the middle of Angelina National Forest. No town, no settlement, no roads, except the main highway 15 miles west. I put the phone down and looked out the windshield. The main street continued through town for maybe another 100 yards, then curved back into the forest. I could see more detour signs pointing that direction. I could turn around and try to back out the way I came, or I could keep going and hope the detour reconnected to the highway soon. I chose wrong. I kept driving. That's when I noticed the people. Not in the street, not in the buildings, in the forest. Standing between the trees, just inside the tree line, perfectly still. Maybe 10, 15 of them, all along both sides of the street. They were wearing, I don't know how to describe it, coveralls, old-fashioned work clothes, but over their heads, masks made from burlap sacks, rough stitching, holes cut for eyes. And they were just there, standing there, not moving, not watching me exactly, just there, facing the road, facing my truck. I pressed the accelerator, sped up, not much, the road was too rough, but faster than the slow crawl I'd been doing.
As I passed each one, I could see them in my peripheral vision. Perfectly still, arms at their sides, heads tilted at the same angle. I counted 17 of them before I reached the end of town. And then I saw the children. 3 of them standing in the road ahead, blocking my path. Small, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, wearing the same burlap masks. I slowed down, stopped maybe 20 feet away. We sat there, my truck idling, them standing perfectly still. One of them, the one in the middle, tilted their head slowly, like a bird examining something. Then they raised one arm, pointed to the left. The detour signs pointed straight ahead, through the children, past the sawmill, back into the forest on the other side of town. But the child was pointing left. I sat there for what felt like an hour, but was probably 10 seconds. Then I made the decision that saved my life. I turned left. The side road was barely a road.
Felt like a logging path, overgrown, branches whipping the windshield. I was sure I'd made a mistake, sure I was driving deeper into whatever pine wood was. But the child had pointed this way. I don't know why I trusted that. A child in a burlap mask in a town that doesn't exist, pointing me toward a dark forest road. But something in my gut said, this is the way out. The road was rough. I was going maybe 10 miles per hour. Trees so close on both sides I could hear them scraping the trailer. My mirrors showed nothing but dense forest behind me. Then I saw light ahead. Not twilight forest light, real light, sunlight. Hope. The trees started to thin. The road surface improved. Dirt became gravel. Gravel became asphalt. And then I burst out of the tree line onto a paved highway, Highway 84. Real, normal, with actual white and yellow lines, and a gas station visible a quarter mile ahead, and cars, real cars, with real people driving them. My GPS pinged. Signal acquired. The screen lit up. My blue dot appeared on Highway 84, 3 miles east of Lufkin, exactly where I should have been if I'd never taken the detour. My phone exploded with notifications, text messages, missed calls, voicemails, all from the last hour. My dispatcher, where are you? You were supposed to check in 20 minutes ago. My wife, call me when you get this. I looked at my clock. I'd been on that detour for 47 minutes. According to my GPS, I'd traveled 16 miles. But Highway 84 was never closed. There was never any construction. The detour didn't exist. I pulled into the gas station, parked, sat there shaking for probably 10 minutes before I could get out of the cab. I went inside, asked a clerk if he knew anything about a town called Pinewood. He looked at me like I was crazy. Pinewood? Never heard of it. You talking about Pine Hill? That's about 40 miles north. No, I said. Pinewood, old timber town, 1920s, off the detour from 84. He shook his head. Highway 84 has been open all day, man. No construction, no detours. A long pause. I bought coffee, walked back to my truck, looked at my trailer. Both sides were scratched to hell, fresh gouges in the paint from branches, deep ones, like I'd driven through a forest so dense the trees had clawed at the metal. But according to everyone else, I'd just driven straight through on Highway 84. I got back in my cab and continued to Shreveport, delivered my load, drove back to Houston, didn't tell anyone what happened. Until now. I couldn't let it go. For weeks I searched. I started with Texas Timber Company records. The Pinewood Timber Company should have been registered, should have paid taxes, should have existed in some official record. Nothing. I checked census data, 1920, 1930, 1940, 1950. No settlement called Pinewood in Angelina County, or any surrounding county. I searched historical newspapers. The Lufkin Daily News goes back to 1908. I went through every digitized issue from 1920 to 1950. Not one mention of Pinewood. But I did find something else. Other towns, timber company settlements, all over East Texas, hundreds of them. Company towns built in the 1920s and 30s, communities of workers who lived on site at sawmills and logging operations. Most of them are gone now, abandoned when the timber ran out, left to rot back into the forest. But a few had stranger endings. Kirbyville had a settlement called Groveton that vanished overnight in 1947. The lumber company just left, took the equipment but left the buildings. When authorities investigated, they found the town empty, meals still on tables, doors unlocked, but no people. Nobody ever found out what happened to the 200 workers and their families. Near Jasper, there was a mill town called Pine Ridge. It operated from 1928 to 1951. Then it closed. Normal shutdown, so people thought. But when developers tried to buy the land in the 1980s, they couldn't find any deed records, couldn't find any evidence the town had ever legally existed. The buildings were still there, though. Locals knew about them, avoided them. And there were others, all through the piney woods, towns that existed but didn't, places people remembered but couldn't prove. I started asking other drivers, older guys, ones who'd been running these routes for 20, 30 years. A few of them, when I mentioned Pinewood, they'd get quiet. One guy, Tommy, he'd been driving since the 90s. When I described what I'd seen, he just nodded. The burlap masks, he said. You saw the burlap masks. You've been there? I asked. Once, he said. 15 years ago. Same thing. Followed a detour, ended up in a town that wasn't on the map. People standing in the trees wearing masks made from sacks. What are they? I asked. I don't know, he said. But I think they're what's left of the people who stayed when the towns died. They just stayed, and the forest grew back around them, and they became part of it. And the children? I asked. Why did the child point me toward the way out? He looked at me for a long time before answering. Because you weren't supposed to see Pinewood. You ended up there by accident. The detour, it's not meant for everyone. It's meant for people who are supposed to be there. Supposed to be there for what? He didn't answer that, just said, the fact that you got out means you weren't one of them, but the detour is still there, the signs are still there, and they'll find someone else. I went back to the satellite imagery, zoomed in on the area where I thought Pinewood had been, the tree patterns. They weren't natural. You could see it from above, perfect grids, rows and columns extending for miles, and in the middle, a clearing, rectangular, about the size and shape of a small town. But in the satellite images, there were no buildings visible, just trees, which means either the town is hidden by the canopy so well that satellite imaging can't penetrate, or the buildings only exist for people who take the detour. I don't drive through East Texas anymore, not if I can avoid it. And if I do, if I absolutely have to, I take the main highways. I don't trust hand-painted signs. Because somewhere in the piney woods, there's a town that doesn't exist, with people who aren't really people anymore. And they're waiting. They're always waiting. If you're a driver, if you run routes through East Texas, listen to me. If you see construction signs that don't look quite right, if you see detours that aren't on TXDOT's website, if you see hand-painted signs telling you to follow a dirt road into the piney woods, don't follow them. I don't care if it says highway closed. I don't care if it looks official. I don't care if you're already running late. Turn around, take the long way, wait for daylight if you have to. Because if you follow those signs, if you end up in a town that's not on the map with people standing in the trees wearing burlap masks, you might not get the same chance I did. The child might not point you toward the way out. You might end up like the others, the ones who never came back, the ones who became part of Pinewood. The piney woods are beautiful during the day, peaceful, safe, but at night there's something else. They're a place where things that shouldn't exist do, where towns that never were are, where people who aren't alive anymore wait. I'm telling this story because I want you to believe me. I want you to take this seriously, because Pinewood is real, even if it doesn't exist. And the detour is still there. The signs are still there, waiting for the next person to follow them. Don't let it be you.
My name is Marcus. I've been driving long-haul trucks for 17 years. I've driven every major highway in the lower 48 states. I've seen accidents, I've seen storms, I've seen things that made me question whether I should pull over and sleep it off. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Highway 90, 17 miles east of Marfa, Texas. November 3rd, 2024. I was hauling refrigerated freight from San Antonio to El Paso. Standard run. I'd done it maybe 40 times before. Highway 90 through West Texas is one of the most isolated stretches of road in America. You can drive for an hour and not see another vehicle. No gas stations, no rest stops, no cell service. Just you, the highway, and the desert. And at night, the Marfa lights. If you don't know what those are, consider yourself lucky.
The Marfa lights. If you're from Texas, you've heard about them. If you're not, here's what you need to know. Since 1883, people have reported seeing unexplained lights in the desert near Marfa. Not car headlights, not campfires. Lights that appear, split into multiple orbs, change colors, move in impossible patterns, and then vanish. The state of Texas built an official viewing area in 2003. People come from all over the world to see them. Scientists have tried to explain them. Atmospheric reflections, swamp gas, car headlights from the highway. Except Highway 90 is 15 miles away from where the lights appear, and the lights were being reported 50 years before cars even existed in this area. Locals don't talk about the Marfa lights much. Not to outsiders anyway, but truckers who run Highway 90 regularly, we have our own stories. Stories we don't share on CB radio because nobody wants to be known as the guy who saw something. But after November 3rd, I don't care who believes me anymore. Before November 3rd, I don't care who believes me anymore. I was maybe 30 miles west of Alpine. Sun had set about 20 minutes earlier, that time of night in the desert when it's not quite dark yet, but your headlights are already on. Twilight, the dangerous time. My CB was quiet. I hadn't passed another vehicle in over an hour. The nearest town was Marfa, 12 miles ahead. I was making good time. Weather was clear, temperature dropping fast, but that's normal for desert at night. I was listening to a podcast, some true crime thing. Wasn't really paying attention, just keeping my eyes on the white line, staying awake, counting the miles. Then I saw the lights. Not the Marfa lights. Not yet. These were different. Headlights, or what looked like headlights, in my mirror, coming up fast behind me. Which was weird, because I hadn't seen anyone on the road for the last hour, and this vehicle was closing the distance at maybe 90, 100 miles per hour.
I checked my speed. I was doing 68 in the 70 zone, plenty of room to pass. But the vehicle behind me didn't pass. It just stayed there, in my mirror, maybe
3, 4 truck lengths back. I keyed my CB. Anybody on the 90, eastbound near Marfa? Static. I tried again. This is the Kenworth hauling east. Anybody behind me want to pass? You got plenty of room. Passage. Nothing. The light stayed in my mirror, matching my speed exactly. I started to get that feeling. You know the one, when something's off but you can't explain why. When your gut is telling you something's wrong, but your brain is saying you're being paranoid. I slowed down, dropped to 60, then 55. The lights behind me slowed down too, maintaining that exact same distance, 4 truck lengths, never closer, never farther. Then they disappeared. The lights behind me were gone, just gone, like they'd never been there. I checked all 3 mirrors, nothing, empty highway in every direction. I took a breath, told myself I was tired, long day, seeing things. Maybe it was another trucker who'd turned off on a ranch road I hadn't noticed. I turned my podcast back on and kept driving. 5 minutes later, my headlights caught something on the shoulder ahead. A vehicle. Overturned, wheels facing the road. I hit my brakes immediately, started slowing down, grabbed my CB radio. Breaker, breaker, this is eastbound 90 near mile marker 28. I've got an overturned vehicle on the north shoulder. Appears to be a vintage pickup truck. Requesting emergency services. Over. Static. I tried my cell phone. No signal.
Never is out there. I pulled over about 50 feet past the wreck, hazards on, grabbed my flashlight and climbed down from the cab. The night was cold. Temperature had dropped to maybe 45 degrees. Wind was picking up. I could hear it whistling through the desert brush. I walked back toward the overturned vehicle, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. It was a 1950s-era Chevrolet pickup, turquoise and white, two-tone paint job, chrome bumper, white wall tires, the kind of truck you see at classic car shows, restored to perfection. Except this one was on its side, in the middle of nowhere, looking like it had just rolled off the road at high speed. But here's what didn't make sense. There were no skid marks leading up to it, no broken glass on the pavement, no debris field, no tire tracks in the dirt shoulder. The truck was just there, like someone had picked it up and placed it there. I called out, "Hello? Anybody hurt? I'm a trucker. I've got a radio. I can call for help." No response. I walked closer, shined my light into the cab through the windshield. Empty. No driver, no passengers, no blood, no airbag deployment, nothing. The interior looked pristine, like the truck had never been driven. Original bench seat, dashboard perfect, even had one of those fuzzy dice hanging from the rearview mirror. I walked around the vehicle, checking for, some explanation, something that made sense. That's when I noticed the license plate. Texas plate, but the design was wrong. It was an old style, black and white, the kind they stopped issuing in the 1970s. And the numbers, the registration sticker said 1952. I backed away from the truck. Something was very, very wrong. I turned around and walked quickly back to my cab, not running, but moving with purpose, that survival instinct kicking in. The one that says, "Get out of here right now." I climbed back in the truck, put it in gear, released the brakes, and pulled back onto the highway. As I accelerated away, I checked my passenger side mirror. The overturned truck was gone. The shoulder was empty, just desert brush and darkness, like it had never been there at all. I told myself I'd imagined it. Fatigue, hallucination, something. I was still 5 miles from Marfa. I'd stop there, get coffee, shake it off, maybe call my dispatcher, tell them I needed to pull over for the night. I kept driving, checked my speed, back up to 65, checked my mirrors, empty highway behind me, focused on the road ahead. 5 miles later, I saw it again.
There it was again. The same truck, same position, same everything. Except this time, someone was standing next to it. A man, wearing what looked like old work clothes, denim overalls, flannel shirt, hat. Hard to make out details at first because my headlights were still a few 100 feet away, but he was holding something. A lantern, an old-fashioned kerosene lantern, orange glow, flame flickering in the wind. He was standing on the shoulder, right next to the overturned truck, perfectly still, facing the highway, facing me. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stop, to help. This was clearly someone in distress, someone who needed assistance. But another part of my brain, the part that had driven through the night for 17 years, the part that knew when something was wrong, that part was screaming louder. I didn't slow down. I kept my speed, 65 miles per hour, hands tight on the wheel, eyes locked forward. As I got closer, the man didn't move, didn't wave, didn't signal for help. He just stood there, holding the lantern, watching my truck approach. I was maybe 200 feet away when I could finally see his face in my headlight beams. His eyes were wrong. I can't explain it better than that.
They were open. They were looking at me, but they were wrong. Like they weren't really seeing. Like there was nothing behind them. 100 feet, he still hadn't moved. 50 feet, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. 20 feet. Then he stepped into the road, not rushed, not stumbling, just stepped, one foot, then the other, walking calmly into the middle of Highway 90, into the path of 40,000 pounds of truck and cargo moving at 65 miles per hour. I didn't have time to brake, didn't have time to swerve. He was just suddenly there in my lane, 10 feet in front of my bumper. I braced for impact, closed my eyes, felt my foot slam the brake pedal to the floor. And then, nothing. No impact, no thud, no sound of a body hitting the grill. I opened my eyes. The highway ahead was empty. I was still moving, slowing down from the brakes, but still rolling forward, maybe 40 miles per hour now. I checked my mirrors. Then, there he was, in my passenger side mirror, still holding the lantern, but he wasn't on the road anymore. He was standing right next to my cab, on the shoulder, matching my speed perfectly as I rolled past him. We were maybe 3 feet apart, and he was staring directly at me through my passenger window. His face was inches from the glass. His eyes, God, his eyes, they were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just black, reflecting the orange glow of the lantern. And his mouth was moving, like he was saying something, but I couldn't hear any sound, just saw his lips forming words over and over, the same words. I slammed the accelerator. My truck lurched forward, engine roaring. I didn't care about speed limits or safety or anything except getting away from that thing. 70, 75, 80. I watched my passenger mirror. Then he was gone. The shoulder was empty, but I could still see the image of his face burned into my vision like I'd been staring at the sun, those black eyes, that moving mouth. And I knew, somehow I knew, what he'd been saying. Turn back.
I drove like hell itself was chasing me. 85, 90. My truck wasn't built for this speed, especially loaded. The whole cab was shaking, warning lights on my dashboard, but I didn't care. Marfa was ahead. 2 miles, maybe less. Lights visible on the horizon. Civilization, people, safety. I grabbed my CB, keyed it. My voice was shaking. Mayday, Mayday, this is eastbound 90, any station. I need someone to acknowledge. I don't know what I've got, but I need help. Over. Please, somebody. I'm 2 miles east of Marfa. I need... just somebody please confirm you can hear me. Nothing. I checked my passenger mirror. Lights. Multiple sets. Maybe 4, maybe 6. Hard to tell. All in a line. All perfectly spaced. All moving in formation. And they were getting closer. I pushed the accelerator harder. I was already maxed out. The engine was screaming, but somehow the truck went faster. 95, 100. The lights in my mirror were still gaining. 1 mile to Marfa. I could see the gas station. Bright fluorescent lights, a beacon in the darkness, the only 24-hour station between Alpine and El Paso. Half a mile. The lights behind me were close enough now that I could see them clearly. They weren't headlights. They were lanterns. 6 of them, in a row, all identical, all glowing that same orange-yellow color, floating in the air behind my truck. No vehicles, no supports, just floating, keeping pace. Quarter mile. I could see the gas station parking lot. 2 other trucks there. Windows lit up inside the station. A clerk visible at the counter. Real, normal, safe. I cranked the wheel right, hit my brakes, felt the whole rig start to jackknife. Didn't care, just needed to get off that highway. The truck screamed, tires screamed, I screamed. And then I was stopped. Parking lot of the gas station.
Engine still running, hazards flashing. My hands frozen on the wheel. I looked in my mirrors. Highway 90 was empty. The lanterns were gone. I sat there for probably 10 minutes. Couldn't move, couldn't think. Just sat there, shaking. Finally, I killed the engine, climbed down from the cab. My legs almost gave out when I hit the pavement. I walked into the gas station. The clerk looked up. Young guy, maybe 22, 23, had a book open on the counter. "You okay, man?" he asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah," I said, "something like that." I told the clerk everything. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed to tell someone, anyone. He listened, didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a 3-ring binder. "You're not the first," he said. The binder was full of incident reports, handwritten notes, printouts, photos, all from truckers and drivers who'd had experiences on Highway 90. Most of them described the same thing: the overturned vintage vehicle, the figure with the lantern, the lights that followed. Some had seen the man step into the road. A few had hit him, or thought they had. No impact, no body, nothing. "It started showing up about 6 years ago," the clerk said. "Nobody knows why. State police investigated, found nothing."
No wrecks matching that description. No missing persons. The truck, if it exists, it's not registered to anyone living. "What is it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Some people say it's connected to the Marfa lights. Some kind of, I don't know, dimensional bleed or something. Others think it's a ghost. Old trucker who died on the highway back in the 50s, trying to warn people away from something." "Warn them away from what?" "That's the thing," he said. "Nobody knows. But everyone who sees him, everyone who drives past instead of stopping to help, they all make it to Marfa safely." "And the ones who stop?" He closed the binder, didn't answer. I stayed in that gas station parking lot for 4 hours, waited until dawn, called my dispatcher, told them I'd had a medical emergency, needed to stop for the night. When the sun came up, I got back on Highway 90 and continued to El Paso. Drove it in full daylight, didn't see anything unusual. That was 3 weeks ago. I've driven Highway 90 twice since then, both times during the day, both times without incident. But I'll tell you this, I will never drive that stretch at night again. And if you're ever out there, if you're hauling through West Texas after dark and you see an overturned vintage pickup truck on the shoulder, don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't look too close. Just keep driving. And whatever you do, don't look in your mirrors.